Montana. 2 people per square mile. It's wild, it's huge, and here, only the toughest can survive. Rick and Nathaniel are big game hunters. For them, every season is the start to a new adventure.
Fun, excellent.
Scott and Jerry know the mountains better than anyone. They are trappers and proud of it.
I think I may have got one.
The Hollenbecks and Arthens have maintained their family ranch for generations. And they're ready to do whatever it takes to make it last for generations to come.
I'll get the last one.
Welcome to Montana, the land of the Wild West.
Got a kitten track. Okay.
Oh my gosh, big herd elk. Wow.
Soft as a flannel diaper.
These are powerful little traps. Whack.
You want to see? Woohoo! Moving now, buddy.
That's how it is around here, I guess.
The Beartooths. In the south of Montana, it's a huge mountain range that rises 12,000 feet. Nestled at the foot of the mountains, the town of Absorki and its 1,200 inhabitants are settling down for a long and hard winter. One of its residents, Rick Matzik, is an experienced hunter. Part of the year, he's a truck driver, and the other part, he hunts big game.
I'm a 5th-generation Montanan. My great-great-great-grandparents were in Virginia City in the gold rush in 1864. I'm a heavy equipment operator, truck driver. In years gone by, I had an outfitting business, road building business, landscaping business. Kind of do whatever it takes to scratch out a living here. It's kind of intense. You have about an 8-month season to make a year's worth of wages in, and winters are usually pretty brutal. The thing that makes life in Montana so much different than any place else is the simple fact you have to be, for the most part, very diversified to survive here.
Rick is an old-fashioned hunter. He makes his own bullets. His favorite rifle is a Shiloh Sharp that was custom-made for him. It's a single-shot black powder rifle, the same weapon the early explorers of the American West used in the middle of the 19th century.
I started hunting when I was about 4 years old with my grandfather. A big reason for the hunting was to put meat on the table. It's a food source. But that's kind of wrapped inside of just being out in the wilderness and experiencing all the things that are out there. It's the greatest schoolhouse in the world. There's nothing that you can maneuver or finagle. I mean, it's pretty much a black and white world. If you go out, if you're stupid, you'll pay the consequences, and sometimes that might be your life.
This is Casey, one of Rick's friends, another talented hunter renowned throughout the area.
Morning, Rick.
His specialty, tracking mountain lions.
How you doing, Casey?
Oh, just seeing what you're up to. What are you up to?
I'm building a gong for some long-range shooting.
Long range, huh?
Yeah.
How far?
Oh, 800.
Bullshit.
No, true story.
With the black powder?
Yeah. He didn't think I could hit my ass with either hand, so at that point I challenged him to prove that one way or the other. If I was successful, he would make his services as a lion hunter available to me, and in the event that I was talking bullshit, that I would make available to him my skills to take him elk hunting.
All right, I'll take that bet.
You're on that?
I'm on that. I didn't honestly think he could make that shot with that big of a rifle. Especially with the Sharps rifle, that's all open sights, single shot. I've never seen it done before.
You realize how far 800 yards is? That's going to be a pretty small target that far away. I may not even be able to see it.
Yeah, it's not nearly as fancy as the rifle that I have, but mine's a lot more accurate. I've got this high-powered scope where I can zoom in really close to the target. Even at 800 yards, I can see very well.
We'll see. All right, well, we'll load stuff up then if you're game. I was going to go do some shooting. And,
Okay.
if you got time to kill, you can lose a bet here.
All right.
Okay, I don't want no crying.
Rick and Casey's bet will be settled on an improvised shooting range, a gravel pit owned by an old friend of Rick's. And while winter is yet to come to Absorki, further east, just on the border of Idaho, Big Hole Valley is already blanketed in snow. The largest town in the area is Jackson, population 30.
See you, Delilah. See you, Rick.
This is Scott Olson. His home is 12 miles from Jackson, down a long dirt road in the middle of the woods. To get to his cabin, you have to be hardcore and love a lot of snow.
When I first told my father that I wished to live there, it goes back to when I was a child and visited this place the very first time when I was 10 or 11 years old, and I told him, I'm gonna live here, and he scoffed, said, nobody can live this high. The winters are too tough, the snow's too deep, you can't drive to it. Well, over time, technology has helped change that.
In the winter, in order to get from Jackson to his cabin, Scott had to create a modified mode of transportation. Instead of normal wheels and tires, his pickup truck's equipped with tracks that allow him to drive through deep snow. Thanks to this innovation, he can get everything he needs to his house for the long winter.
Would I like to live near that small town? It's only 30 people. Not really. It doesn't have the challenge. It doesn't have the adventure. I like the solitude, the quietness. I like being able to read the signs that nature shows me without being cluttered with the modern world. Is it necessary? No. Is it possible to do? Yes. Is it what drives me? Absolutely. It's a different lifestyle. It's very remote. It's tough, it's challenging, it's beautiful, but it has its own laws. And those challenges are what I really yearn for. I like to go back in time. I like to see how the old pioneers, the old mountaineers did it, how the Native Americans did it, and adapt myself to that.
Scott lives here with his wife, Suzy. They just celebrated their 37th anniversary.
Yes, it's torqued a little.
We met on a blind date, and I found out very quickly she was the only daughter in the family with a lot of brothers. And she knew how to fish, how to bait her own hook, how to kill her own snake, and also how to skin a deer.
At the beginning of winter, Scott and Suzy create a stockpile of food to fill their basement. Enough so they can survive weeks of being snowed in.
The store is so far away. We're 63 miles, and it's just in driving time, it's a 3-hour round trip. So it's always really nice to have these things on hand. I can go shopping in my basement. It's an expanded pantry for me. This is such a good option to cook with, too.
Thanks to their reserves, Scott and Suzy could manage to live 2 years without ever leaving their house. Even though their pantry is mostly composed of the basic essentials to survive a winter, they also keep some guilty pleasures.
Let's go eat.
We can beans, potatoes, and that's something that we really enjoy. And then, of course, the fresh fruit, which makes a real difference. And then we have dry goods such as potato products, onions, carrots that are going to enhance a basic diet, give more flavor and variety to it. It's good too to combine some of those comfort foods. A brownie mix, cake mix, it will enhance an experience if you are caught in a survival situation, because the emotional side is also very important. Do you want to try some of these sausages that you do?
German sausages.
Oh,
Buffalo
okay.
German sausage.
Sounds
deal.
good.
All right.
All right.
Scott is known as a famous mountain man. He sells his furs and hides to clients from around the world. His custom-made products are an assortment of tools and objects inspired by traditional Native Americans, such as dresses, jewelry, dolls, and a vast collection of beautiful artwork. This winter, Scott has a lot on his plate. His main goal, to finish tanning 30 hides, a colossal mission that will keep him busy in his workshop for the long, cold winter. This morning, he's working on his first winter order, a buckskin for one of his Las Vegas customers. He killed the deer himself during this past hunting season.
So this is the messiest part of the procedure. It has to be shaved off. What we're using to shave the hair off is basically a planer blade sharpened to a dull finish on the edge. And you basically are trying to get the hair off without damaging the skin underneath. But not only are you taking the hair off, you are taking this brown layer right here, the epidermis or the scarf skin or the grain. If you leave that grain on, it will show up in your finished hide. The hide will not go soft in that area because there's glue in that grain that holds the hide together. And this takes about, anywhere from an hour to 3 hours to dehair a deer hide. Stay in a nice log shelter like this where I'm out of the wind and yet still be able to produce a workable object that I can market. It doesn't pay real well, but it's kind of fun. You get to debate the meaning of life, and you always wonder about why you're doing it, but it's still fun.
It will take Scott Olson many hours of work to finish his first winter hide. And meanwhile, back at Canyon Mountain, close to the small town of Livingston, Nathaniel Browning also has a busy schedule for the winter. He lives on the side of the mountain in a small wooden cabin, isolated in the middle of the wilderness. He wouldn't leave it for anything in the world.
Here you go. Everything about Montana is just big, bigger than everywhere else. I love how minuscule you can feel. You get your real connection into how small we really are on this planet as opposed to our normal viewpoint where we're on top of everything. Here you start to realize that you're insignificant in reality.
Nathaniel is an expert in the art of primitive skills. He lives according to the codes and traditions of the first Native Americans who occupied the region. He learned how to make his own tools, bows, arrows, knives. Everything in his home is made by his own hands.
That takes it one step further in the connection to the land itself and the hunt, making it a sacred hunt for me anyway, is being able to know that I can make all of the tools that I need. The one thing that separates us from everything else is our ability to make tools. The hunt is sacred. The animal is going to feed me. The animal is going to keep me alive. In order to do that, I have to have a bow that I make as the tool to take that animal, and the arrow as the tool to take that animal. And I have to make each one of those as perfect as I can make them myself. Once I get to that point, I know I've put everything into it that I possibly can, because your life can depend upon that bow and that arrow making food for you and your family that you live. And if you can't do that, you're going to be hungry.
Nathaniel has just completed the fall hunting season and was fortunate enough to collect enough food for the winter. But on his last outing, he noticed some problems with his favorite bow.
Doesn't pull like it used to. I've used it a lot. It's taken a lot of game, a lot of deer. It's getting old. It's getting some cracks in the back of the bow here. I don't know if it's gonna last much longer. Feels like it might break at any time. When you're pulling it and you can feel it, the tension building up on it and the release on a bow will be whoosh, quick smack really fast. This is kind of just like a woof. It doesn't have the same pap to it. It's more of a woof. It doesn't shoot the same, doesn't have the same power, the same cast behind it. The arrows just aren't flying the way they're supposed to. I want to retire it for all that it's done for me, all the animals it's gotten. It's time to retire it and build a new bow.
This winter, Nathaniel has to build a new bow and enough arrows to make it through the next hunting season. He's got a lot of work ahead of him. Just above the Madison Valley, on the road to West Yellowstone, lies Quake Lake, a small mountain lake 6,300 feet above sea level. About 6 miles long, Quake Lake was formed 60 years ago during the largest earthquake ever measured in Montana. This is the favorite spot for one of the most famous trappers in the region, Jerry Clark.
I've lived here my whole life, born and raised here. I'm a 4th generation trapper.
Before him, his great-grandfather, his grandfather, and his father were also very renowned trappers. Clark's family has trapped all kinds of animals in the region: fox, beaver, muskrat, and otter.
My primary target is pine marten, or American sable, and I've been doing this for 45 years.
Throughout the winter, Jerry inspects his trap line several times a week. For each pine marten that he can trap, the fur is worth several $100s at the fur auction. Each time he lays a trap, he tries to pick a spot that will give him the best chance for a prime catch.
I try to make it easy for the marten to get to. Now, the marten is a tree climber. He has no problem climbing a tree. He can go right up a tree faster than a squirrel. But some marten refuse to climb a tree to a trap. So if you lean a log at an angle to it to where it makes it very easy for him to go.
Jerry puts his bait in wooden or plastic rectangular boxes, which prevent birds from stealing the bait. He always sets the boxes under huge conifers to protect them from the snow. Being a trapper in Montana requires knowing how to face the harshest conditions, and most of all, to be able to adapt to all kinds of climate. Here, the weather can change quickly.
It can be 40 degrees, the sun's shining, everything is great. 24 hours later, there's 1.5 feet of snow, and it's 0. And everything just changes so fast that it's just really hard to keep up with it. This is a can of sardines I'm going to use for marten bait. I take this, I'm going to drip this oil down this log. That marten will smell that. That'll smell good to him. I use sardines because they're preserved in oil so they won't freeze, so they continue to smell throughout the season. Now I'm going to set a trap for him. It's a conibear trap. And when the marten comes into the box, he hits these trigger wires, these jaws snap shut, kills this marten instantly. It kills them by striking their neck or their back or both. They don't move, that's it. They never leave. Whack. These are powerful little traps. They'll get your fingers once in a while. It doesn't feel very good. I got both thumbs caught in one once. Didn't work out real well. Had to have my wife get it off.
But the strength of Jerry's traps would be ineffective without his secret weapon, a mixture he puts next to the trap which emits a very strong smell that draws the martens in from a very long distance.
Secret sauce here draws them for miles. I use a scent above the trap made out of a skunk-based petroleum mixture, and it'll pull a marten from a mile away. They'll smell it. There'll be a marten in that trap in the next week.
Back to the Big Hole Valley. Scott Olson continues to work on his first hide of the winter in order to get it to his Las Vegas client in time. It took him more than 3 hours to get all the hair off the hide, and there are still many more steps to go. The hide must now be soaked in a solution made out of brain. It will make the skin both very soft and very strong.
And that is just brains, the oils of the brains that are going to go into the hide itself. Letting it penetrate, letting it freeze dry, do it again, letting it penetrate, and then working the hide so that it becomes beautiful white as the snow, soft as a diaper. So every deer hide has its own story. This is the head of the deer. This is the tail of the deer. This is the leg, back legs here and here, front legs here and here. But every hide tells a story, the number of scars that go down the center of the back where the deer was running underneath a barbed wire fence or clipped a tree or got in a fight with another buck deer. This deer was shot here on the side and exited down here.
The number of buckskins to tan varies, depending on the article to create. In some cases, Scott has to be very patient to get all the leather he needs.
If you're making a jacket, it's going to take about 6 hides. One here, one here, one here, one here, one here, and then any fringe. If you want foot-long fringe, that is a foot-wide swath of hide that you cut into fringe.
Scott needs a total of 30 to 50 hours to tan just one buckskin. But despite all this very long and tedious work, this is not what's hardest for him.
And then it takes a whole day of crying before you have the guts to cut up this hide that you worked so hard on.
Meanwhile, in Absorki, Rick and Casey arrive at the shooting range. Rick, the seasoned hunter, made a bet with Casey that he could shoot a target with his old Shiloh Sharp rifle from 800 yards away, a single shot charged with black powder. Casey, on the other hand, is used to shooting with a modern high-tech rifle and is convinced that Rick doesn't stand a chance.
All right. With Rick's gun, it's got a lot of lead that he's trying to push downrange. It's also got a lot of powder, but the bullet drop, because that thing is so heavy, it drops really fast. Now, what do you do that for?
It takes and the black powder residue in there, the moisture softens it. If you don't do it, it'll build up and powder foul.
Okay.
Oh, so this is where the fun begins. Okay, are you on the action?
I'm ready. The factors that were working against him were everything, really. We had not real great weather. Typically, when you want to shoot, you want 60 degrees, dead wind, because that's when your bullet flies the best.
So you're on, Casey?
Yep. Yeah, we had snow, crosswind, and a long range. So yeah, all that combined, you never know exactly where your bullet's gonna hit, so. I didn't think he'd be able to shoot that distance.
Low and to the right.
How much low?
Foot right, 6 inches low.
Oh, just 6 inches under?
Yep.
And to the right, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think what the problem is, I lifted my head off the gun when I shot.
Oh.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Bit more wind now, too. Way left.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
I heard it hit.
You can't hear anything with your earmuffs on.
I got amplifiers in here.
Oh.
Elevation was good?
Yeah, your elevation looked pretty good. Could go a little bit higher, but not much.
Yeah, that wind's just doing weird shit out there.
Hit.
Okay, that's one. You've already lost the bet. You just want to go home?
Nope.
Okay, this will be 2. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Hit. That was a good shot.
And what were you saying? I couldn't hit my ass with both hands?
I've heard of people shooting those Sharps rifles out to that distance, but I've never actually got to see it until that day. For that kind of a rifle, shooting that distance, absolutely. That was good shooting.
Well, Casey, it looks like you owe me a cat hunt.
Yes, I do.
I won.
It was fun.
Meanwhile, north of Livingston, Nathaniel Browning, the primitive hunter, left for his first expedition of the winter. His goal, find at least 5 straight shafts so he can make into arrows to use with his new bow. He is exploring along the riverbanks of No Tellin Creek, where he's previously found tried and true shafts to work with. In this tangled thicket, he knows that he'll find material that is strong and straight enough to make good arrows.
It's always tough to gather the arrow shafts because there are literally millions of shoots growing out there. You have to know which ones are the correct plant to gather to begin with, and especially know what they look like without leaves on them or anything like that. So you have to know the correct species to start with. So in here I've got lots of rose growing, even choke cherries growing in here, but none of this stuff will work for an arrow. It's all too small, it's twisted up. You have to find ones that are perfectly straight, which in nature, as everybody knows, nothing really grows straight when you look at it. So you have to find the one that's closest to straight. So those grow in a certain environment where they're semi-shaded, so they have to reach up for the sunlight, but not so thick that they're all messed up from the other plants. So right now I'm looking for these wild rose right here. So this wild rose is really strong. There's one back here that's long enough, straight enough, and thick enough to become an arrow shaft. Not free, no galls in it, no big twists and turns in the right diameter. You have to look at all those factors to find the right one. Thank you, my brother. You went to hunt with me. Now that I have it, I'm going to take a lot of these thorns off so this doesn't prick me throughout the day. Straightening and drying this will make this into a good arrow. It's still got a little moisture in it, so I can bend it straight, starting now, and I'll finish straightening and bending it later on. Now find another one. Out of the hundreds of thousands that we walked by, I only walked out of there with a few that I felt were going to be right. But in the end, you only need one. Okay. So somehow a cottonwood tree broke off somewhere up top. Part of this bark came off of it and actually landed in this hang in this tree. So this is actually gonna be perfect tinder for starting a fire down here, because the inner bark of cottonwood is spectacular for making a tinder bundle. And this has been hanging off the ground, so it's not damp. It's been sitting in the sunshine today, so it's warmed up and dried out more than everything else around here. So I'm definitely gonna throw some of this in my pocket for if and when we gotta start a fire later on.
Meanwhile, at Quake Lake, Jerry Clark, the trapper, checks his lines. He hopes to catch some animals that will bring him a good price at the market.
I usually check my traps every 4 to 7 days. The trap kills the marten, and then he freezes almost immediately within a few hours, and he won't spoil. So they can be left in the trap for 10 days, 2 weeks. It wouldn't hurt them. But I don't like to leave stuff out that long. Something might come along and eat on it. Birds, coyotes, something like that. So you need to pick them up as soon as you can. Here we have a pine marten. Caught just like they're supposed to be caught. 2 strikes, one across the neck, one across the back. Dead instantly. Fine animal. Most people never see one. This is a female. Not a good sign. Every time you catch a female, that's half a dozen kits you're not gonna have for next year. I try to stay away from areas where I catch a lot of females because they have a smaller range than the male. So if you find that you're catching female marten consistently over a period of time, you want to get out of there. Leave those females alone. The female we caught today, I could tell because of the shape she was in and her age, because she had gray on her back. She was an old female. She'd been producing a lot of kits, and it's a shame to kill her when you try not to. I'll go back in there and pick that box up and take it somewhere else. I got to get out of there. Marten are really susceptible to over-trapping. You just got to really be aware of what you're doing. You can wipe them out in just a short period of time. Uh-huh. All right. Now, Mr. Marten. Okay. See the difference in size in this marten compared to the last one? Bigger ears, bigger feet, longer tail, male. Big male. It's a good day when you catch a male marten. And undo this trap, because this trap is froze on this marten. After I find a pine marten and I trap, I can't take it out of the trap on sight because it's froze to the trap and I don't want to damage the fur. So I take trap, marten, and everything back to my home in the shop. By the next morning, the trap will fall right off it. The marten's thawed out, and then I can skin it. I don't have to replace the bait because that marten got killed before he got to the bait. So the bait is still good. So we'll take this little prize, take him to the shop, thaw him out, skin him out, put him on a board. Let it dry for 3-4 days, take it off the board. It's ready for market.
It's the end of the day for Jerry Clark. What he caught today should bring him at least $300 at auction. On his next trip, however, he'll have to move the traps that are threatening the female population. The season is far from over. Meanwhile, in Big Hole Valley, Scott has made good progress on the hide for his Las Vegas client. He tackles one of the longest and most tedious parts of the process, removing all the moisture from the skin and making it as soft as possible.
Sometimes you'll find places that might have a little bit of epidermis left on them. If you have any epidermis left on the hide, it will be too smooth and it won't dry properly. And so I will use primitive tools to remove that. It's a scraper, so it was placed in the hand so that Indians could go over the hide. There you can see little pieces of epidermis that were left that are coming off. That will just give your finished product a much nicer look, a smoother look. I'm passing on that tradition because I'm using the same tools that they used with primitive man to do the same process. The steps involved in working the leather and making it soft, from the raw stage to the finished stage, are numerous, and they're many. Some of them have to be repeated over based on the hide. But I enjoy that task because it determines what the hide is going to look like. Therefore, you may have to go back and repeat a step to get it soft, or you may be able to speed up a step and it gets softer faster than you believe. But each step is important. There's no such thing as a free lunch here in the mountains.
During the long winter days, Scott Olson has perfected his craft, tanning his hides in his workshop. His hides are among the most prized in the state. After hours of work, the buckskin is ready for its final step. Scott will now smoke it to make it waterproof, and most importantly, to give it its color.
The process of smoking the hide, of giving it its final color, its final finishing touch, is a process that, despite being the last one, you can still ruin the hide. The hide is attached to the smoke box by a skirt made out of canvas, and it stays above the smoke box a couple feet. The reason for that is, at times, the coals, the punky wood, could catch fire and flare up. And I have lost hides years ago by not paying attention to that fact and having the canvas skirt catch on fire or generating too much heat so fast that the hide shriveled up. That's where I learned to use a handkerchief because I was crying to see that go up in smoke.
The kind of punk wood that you use will give you different colors on the hide. For instance, this is off of Douglas fir, a conifer, and it gives it kind of a golden brown in a finished color. If I was to use punky wood off of a cottonwood tree, it would be a lighter, more mellow brown. If I used willow bark, it would give it kind of a light beige color. And then if you use other woods like a punky cedar, it will give you a little more reddish tint. So now slowly the smoke will start coming up and coming out of the hide. This is probably the most exciting part of the process because you're near the end. And once it gets to this stage, you can see the finished product. It's kind of like seeing the finish line. And then having that smoky smell is what ties you into nature, where you feel like you're at one out in the woods with the animals again. This will smoke like this for about 40 minutes, and then we will change the wood out again, turn the hide inside out, and smoke the other side about 20 minutes.
Scott's work is a labor of love. The buckskin is ready to be sent to the Las Vegas buyer. For Scott, it's one less hide to make this winter, but it's mostly the satisfaction of having created a piece of art.
This hide that you put all this time and effort into and create a beautiful article and then bead or quill on it to brighten it up, to give it some color according to whatever tribal design you desire. And then seeing the satisfaction of a person that sees that article and says, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So just like any artist, that gives you a great amount of satisfaction because you did it from start to finish with your own two hands and just a lot of hard work. This is a process that has taken all my life. Am I perfect at it? No. Am I good at it? Kinda.
This winter's going to be tough in Big Hole Valley, but like every year, Scott Olson is ready for it. Meanwhile, near No Tell'em Creek, Nathaniel Browning continues to search for the best shoots to make his arrows for the next hunting season.
Not sure on this one.
He's already collected some good ones that he can work on when he gets back to his cabin.
Wow, this is nice and straight.
The hunter has walked all day. He's now several miles from his starting point, and the day is coming to an end. Nathaniel must make a difficult decision.
I was a ways away and didn't have everything that I needed to have gathered at that point. So I still had to get some more arrow shafts. And since I'm already there, I might as well wait it out for another day instead of leaving and then coming back again to do it.
Nathaniel has no choice. He has to build a shelter as quickly as possible and will now spend the night in the woods.
Shelter is always going to be the top of your priority list of the sacred order. Without shelter, in certain situations, you might not make it 3 hours.
I gotta find somewhere to shelter up because it's gonna get pretty cold tonight. I'm getting a little nervous about this. I'm gonna have to probably work pretty fast to build a shelter and get a fire going before tonight.
I I needed to build a shelter quick. I only had a couple hours to do it before it was gonna get dark, and you're in trouble then if you don't have anywhere to stay.
After years of hunting in the mountains, Nathaniel has perfected his survival skills. The first decision is the most important one. He has to find the best possible location to build his shelter.
I chose that location for the shelter because it was protected from the wind on the edge and in a dry area that was hit by sun in the morning first thing, and the ground was dried out there, for one thing. It's not somewhere that you'd want to stay for a long time, but it'll get you through the night.
In order to make the shelter as warm as possible, he has to search for the right materials to create the structure.
I knew there was cattails right there, so I was able to get the dry cattails to use as a mattress and also to cover over the shelter itself. So I just took a big down log, took all the sticks around it, put that over for a basic frame for it, covered with cattails, put my mattress in there, then walked a little further on and gathered the tall grasses that were sticking up out of the snow that weren't wet. So I made a nice little squirrel shelter, nestled myself up in there and be fine for the night.
All right. Got enough to cover up the entranceway. So I'll sleep sound tonight. Maybe a little claustrophobic, but be warm anyway.
After 1 hour of work, Nathaniel has created a shelter that will protect him from the cold, the wet ground, and the wild animals.
A man can always stand a hell of a lot more than he thinks he can. People have gone through so much in this world to where just being cold for a night is the least of your worries a lot of the time. If you don't let your mind focus on discomfort and let your mind go to something else, you're probably gonna be all right. A lot of it's mental out there in the woods anyway. The body can stand a lot more than you think it can.
But there's still one more thing to do before the sun goes down: build a fire. In order to do that, he has to use an ancient technique that's thousands of years old.
Bow drill fire is common across cultures throughout the entire world. All of our ancestors have used a bow drill fire at one time or another to make fire to keep themselves warm. That was taught to me probably 17, 20 years ago was when I first learned how to do that. It took a lot of practice to get good at it.
For Nathaniel, the hours of trudging through thick branches of No-Tellin Creek have been successful. He can go to sleep knowing that today was a good day.
Got a couple chokecherry here that look like they're gonna work out good. I got one rose that I found, and I definitely want to find another one of these. At least, you have to have a bunch of these, and these are harder to find, but they make really good arrows, really stiff and strong once they're dried out. But I don't have nearly enough yet. So hopefully tomorrow I can find a few more that are gonna work out right. Find a few more of the right ones. This one looks like it's gonna be good, but 3 arrows, 3 possible arrows, sure isn't enough for hunting season. Especially with the way I shoot, they're not gonna be enough.
For Nathaniel Browning, it's time to get comfortable in his makeshift shelter. The night to come will be long, but the hunter knows that this is the price to pay if he wants to find the best shafts to build his arrows.
Good night.
In the distance, Nathaniel hears the cries of the coyotes that inhabit the region. However, he's well prepared for all of the presented dangers of the frozen nights of Montana.